Okay, so now that we've talked about some measures of central tendency and a little bit of the awesome history of central tendency, we actually have to talk about how are we actually going to do these in practice. We talked about how to do them, in theory or with pencil and paper, the actual formulas, but that becomes really cumbersome really quickly, right? And so it's a lot easier to just use a calculator or a program to calculate these for you. And in this class, we're using Excel. So let's take a look at some of these formulas. The most easy way that you're going to be able to calculate a lot of these measures of central tendency. So for mean, the easiest thing, what we're going to do is we're going to add all of these values together and divide by 3. So there's a couple different ways that we can do this in Excel. The first thing is when you're typing in one of these formulas, you always have to type equals. The equal sign tells Excel that a formula is coming up. So if you want to compute something, you have to type in an equal sign. So check this out. If I just wanted to say A2, so I'm in column A, and this value is in row 2, so A2. I want to add A2, A3, and A4. If I told it A2 plus A3 plus A4, oh, nothing happened. Well, that's because I didn't put in an equal sign to tell it that a formula is coming up. It thinks I'm just entering text if I don't have an equal sign. So if I want to actually get a value for this, I have to throw in an equal sign, and there's my sum of A2, A3, and A4. Of course, we're not looking for the sum. We're looking for the sum divided by 3. So there we go. And did you see the formula I typed in for that right here is A2 plus A3 plus A4 divided by 3. Throw in the parentheses there to make sure that Excel's doing the order of operations correctly. If you don't have parentheses, it's going to divide A4 by A3 and then add that to A2 and A3. So you need to make sure that you have those parentheses in the right place. Now, we can get easier with this. How do we get easier with this? We can say equals sum, and then we can drag down for these 3 divided by 3. This just means it's going to take the sum of all of these numbers that we've highlighted and divide it by 3, and it's the same answer. And we can get even easier with it. We can say equals average and select these 3 numbers and hit enter. And it's 2416 no matter what you do, right? So these are 3 different ways that we can get to where we're going. Now, I want to show you also what I did here for the one just above this was average, open parenthesis, and then I selected these 3 numbers here with my mouse. I don't have to do that. I can also type in A2 colon A4. Now, the colon means through. So if I wanted to say, if I had data for A2 through A18, I could say A2 colon A18. Just think of a colon as through. You can select it or you can type it in. If you have a really large amount of data, it's actually a lot quicker to type it in. If you have a small amount of data, of course, it's easier to just select it. There's another thing I want to tell you. Oh yeah, the open parenthesis and close parenthesis. Anytime you're using a formula that Excel gives you, you have to do an open parenthesis. What I mean by a formula that Excel gives you is, I mean a formula that is predefined in Excel. So you can see here, I have sum, and then I have to have an open parenthesis before I tell Excel what to add together. In this one, I have average. I have to have an open parenthesis before I tell Excel what to add together. So these are things that you're going to see. An equal sign means, hey, let's start a formula. You can type in one of these text commands like sum, average, etc. And then you have an open parenthesis after that text command to tell Excel, here's what you're actually doing with that command that I just told you. Okay, so these are different ways to compute the mean of this set of number of Lego stepped on by 3 different people. Sounds horrible. Okay. On average, 2,416 pieces of Lego. Okay, so we can also talk about a weighted mean. A weighted mean we might need when, let's say we know that there are 4 values of 97, 11 values of 94. Now I could go through and I could type in 97 4 times. That doesn't seem too hard. But then I'm going to have to type in 94 11 times, and I'm going to have to type in 90 30 times. I'm going to have a hugely long set of data just to come up with an average. No, that doesn't sound very fun. I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to multiply the value by the number of times that value shows up, or the frequency. So it is I'm going to start a formula. I'm going to tell Excel that I want a computation done, so I have to start with an equal sign. So we're going to say equals A2 multiplied by B2. Multiplied by is the star in this case. You can't use, the little x, because then it's just going to say A2x B2, which it doesn't understand as a command. You can tell here that A2 it thinks is something because it's highlighting the box A2 in blue, which is the same color A2 is in. And it's highlighting B2, the same color as the words B2 that I've written in. The box is highlighted in red and B2 is written in red, so you can see what you're actually doing. It highlights it for you. But if I did X B2, you'd see that nothing is highlighted. It's going to have an error if I do that. So you have to do the star. A2 times B2. Okay, 388. Awesome. I'm going to teach you a really awesome secret now. So in the very bottom, you see how there's this little small, I don't even know what to call it. It's a dot. It's a tiny little square in the bottom right-hand corner of the cell that I'm in. If I grab that, specifically that, my cursor changes. It goes from a white open plus sign to a dark closed plus sign, basically, right? So boop, 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 boop. You want the dark one. If I'm off of it anywhere, it's not that dark plus sign. I want this dark black plus sign. That is going to signify to us that there's something special happening. So click, hold down, and drag this all the way down. Haha. So what that's done is, if you look at your formula here, A2 times B2, well now what's this one? A3 times B3, A4 times B4. We could have typed all these in, but we don't have to. Because what that does, this special cursor here, means that we're copying the formula all the way down. And the formula updates itself. So I had A2 times B2. As I pull it down, it knows that it's moving downwards in the numbers, and so it's going to update the numbers of the formula. So that's pretty awesome and pretty helpful. Okay, so let's do another step here. Now we've got kind of like pre-sums, basically, right? So this is kind of like we've added 97 plus 97 plus 97 plus 97, right? 97 times 4. And so what do we do when we're taking the average of everything? We add everything together, and then we divide by how many there are, right? So what we've got here is 97 times 4 and 94 times 11 and so on. So what we need to do is we need to add all of these values together. Oh, I should change my slide. There we go. So we need to add all of these values together to come up with the total that we're looking at. So I'm going to say equals because we're telling Excel that we're doing something, and then I'm going to say sum. And what do I need next? Open parenthesis. Boom. Open parenthesis says this is what we're summing, Excel, and then I'm going to hit enter. And there's 8,967. Now, I also want to take the sum of the frequency here. Why? Because we need to know how many things there are. So I'm going to say sum, and so I could select all these, right? But just to remind you of the other way you can do this, I'm going to type in B2 colon, which means through, B9. Boom. All right. So now to compute the weighted average, what we want to do is divide the sum of everything by how many there were. So C10, which is our sum, our grand mean, divided by B10, which is how many there were. And we have 89.67. That's how you do a weighted mean. All right. Next, we want to look at the median. Okay, so the median, we've got these income levels here. Now remember, we talked about this. We took the average of the income levels, the $135,000 income is going to vastly skew what these actual real incomes are. And so let's just take a look at what that average would be. I'm going to type in average, open parenthesis. Okay, so the average income of all these people is $53,000. This is probably a yearly income. And is that representative of these people? Not really. I mean, that's saying that this person right here who has the second highest income is making the average income. So it doesn't really represent that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 people making significantly less than $53,000. So we don't want to use the average, right? We want to use the median because the median is not as susceptible to outliers. So how do we use the median? Well, it's as easy as you think it might be. We type in equals, and then we type in median. What? And then an open parenthesis, and we just select that data. Hit enter, and there's your median, 36,000. And that's a little bit more representative, right? We've got 1, 2, 3 salaries that are above 36,000, 1, 2, 3 salaries that are below 36,000. This gives us a much more accurate view of what the people in the sample are actually making. The one Jeff Bezos that makes $135,000 doesn't skew the data as much. I realize that Jeff Bezos makes more than $135,000. Like, what, 1 million times more than that. Okay, that's the median. Again, it's just like average. Only instead of typing in average, we type in median. Hey. Okay. Next, we want to look at the mode. All right. Every time I say that, I got sidetracked because I started thinking about ice cream because all in mode. Anyway, don't pay attention to that. Okay, so the mode. We want to know what number occurs most often. So we have this group of people. This is probably at like a, I don't know, like a town hall or something like that. And as people are filing in, they identify as either a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. We want to know what is the most, which of those groups has the highest attendance, right? Democrats, Republicans, or independent. We could do that by looking at the mode. Now, this is the thing about mode. You can have a single mode, or you can have a bimodal distribution, you can have a multimodal distribution. We talked about that in the last lecture. And because of that, we're going to have different code for different kinds of mode. Different code for different mode. Okay. So what we're going to do here is, it's very slightly different than average and median, but it's not that much different. So we're going to type in mode dot SNGL. Now, what's nice about Excel is it shows you, if you followed that, down below, right here where I am, it gives me all the choices that I could continue typing. Mode.mult, mode.single, and mode, which is an outdated form. It also just does single. If you just do mode without the period and then the rest of the code, it just gives you a single unimodal thing. Anyway, so mode.sngl, and then open parenthesis, because, same old thing. We're telling it what to take the mode of. And then grab everything from A2 down to A20 and hit that enter button. The mode is 1. So what's most likely here? There's more Democrats at this town hall meeting than anything else. Okay, that's the mode. Cool. Isn't it nice how easy all this is? I mean, you don't have to do any computations. You can just get a quick look at your data. That's why it's nice to have a knowledge of Excel. Okay, what if we have a multimodal distribution? Here we're looking at hair color, presumably of that same town hall meeting. I don't know. Seems interesting. I don't know why anyone would know this, but they did. Number 1 corresponds to red hair. Number 2 corresponds to blonde hair. 3 to black, and 4 to brown. This is possibly a multimodal distribution. Let's say you didn't know. I have prior knowledge. It's set up this way so I can show you, but let's say you didn't know and you wanted to see if it was a multimodal distribution. You type in equals sign to tell Excel that there's a formula coming up. Mode.mult, of course, stands for multi or multiple. And then we're just going to, again, select the data that we want. This time I won't do it with the mouse and the cursor. I'm going to type it in just to remind you that that can be done. So it's A2 through A24. There we go. And there. So what's really cool about this is it will put down in a row all of the modes that there are. So potentially it'll, go all the way down if there were a ton of modes. But here we've got 3 and 4 as our mode. And it tells us that. Now, what happens if we change this to 1? 4 disappears. So you can use mode.mult even on a unimodal data set, and it'll return just one mode, and then but if you have multiple modes, it will also tell you if you have multiple modes. Okay, the next thing we can do is we want to look at the analysis toolpak. There is a way to do all of this without typing in code. Now, it seems like a way to do it without typing in code is going to be easier, but there's a lot of clicks involved. And once you get good with these codes, I'm telling you, I know how it feels. I was in the same boat. The first thing I wanted to do was let's just click on stuff because that's so much easier. But as it got more ingrained in my brain, what these codes actually were, it became a lot easier to just type them in. And I could just, use the mouse and say average, and then go click on the thing I want. So many fewer clicks. It's so much quicker. Okay. Anyway, analysis toolpak. There's another video on how to get analysis toolpak if you don't already have it. But this is assuming that you do have it. So if you don't have it yet, go watch that video and come back. If you do have it, let's go ahead and use it. So this is what the analysis toolpak is going to look like. And we're doing it on income level here, which was my median. Yeah, there we go. This is from my median data set. So we're going to go to data. We're going to go to data analysis. It's going to load for a while. There we go. And we want to go to descriptive statistics. Click OK. And now it wants to know our input range. The input range is just all the data that we want to take a look at. So we're going to highlight all these incomes here. It's in columns. That's the default. So that's good. We can actually highlight A1 through A7 and then tell it that we have labels in the first row. This way it'll put labels on our output. And then you have different options for output. You can put it into a new worksheet, and you can call it something like income data. This would open up a whole new worksheet, another one of these little tabs down here. I don't really want that. I'm going to put it in output range. When you do an output range, you have to tell it where to go. So you're going to click in this open field here and then just click on C1. That's fine. Okay, what you want to do is you want to get some summary statistics for this, and that's it. And we're going to click OK. And here we go. This is everything we have. Let me spread this out so you can actually read it. There we go. So we have the mean, 53,324. That is what we computed earlier. Remember, the mean was not very representative of these actual incomes. The standard error, we'll talk about standard error in the future. The median is 36,000. This is what we computed earlier with code. In fact, you can see it right here, 36,000. We've also got standard deviation, variance, and some other stuff that you don't really need to know about. Standard deviation and variance we'll talk about later. Kurtosis and skewness way further down the road in the class. You've also got the range. Useful, right? Good to know. You know the minimum value and the maximum value, the sum of everything, and how many data points were used in this calculation. This is good to look at if you have a large data set, just to make sure that you have the number of data points that you think you should. So if you know you have like 132 data points, if this says 132, then you're good. Okay, so that was an easy way to get everything that you need, right? It gives you median, mean, mode if there was one, but of course there is not a mode here, so you don't see it. What if we made a mode? $25,500. We're going to throw that in again, and we're going to delete our median. Go to data, data analysis, descriptive statistics. I'm going to change my range here because now we're going to A8. Everything else is the same. Now let's change where we're going to put this. We're going to put it in F. Just click. Put it in F1. Okay. So now you can see that our mean with that new value of $25,000, our mean has dropped to 49,000. Still not super representative. Our median is 34,000, better, and our mode is 25,500, which makes sense because we have two of those. If you don't have a mode, it doesn't show up. If you do, it does. And again, all these other things that we'll talk about later, and account, which is now 7 instead of 6. Okay. That's enough of Excel, so let's make this bigger. Yeah, here's some things that you want to remember. Central tendency is describing the center point of a distribution. You've got the mean, the median, and the mode. The mean is the most common. However, median is really good when you have outliers. Next, capital N is the population size. Little n is the sample size. Mu is a population mean, while x bar is a sample mean. The formula for average, x bar, or average, is the sum of all of your different values, all of your x's, or x sub I, over n. And sigma, again, means take the sum of. And then the other thing is, no matter how fancy a statistic you're going to use, a t-test, a multi-level model, anything, you always start by describing what you actually have. What's there? Here's a value. This is how many Legos were stepped on or something like that. And you want to know the average number of Legos stepped on. We always start with the average. And The next thing we put after the average is the standard deviation. So we always report those two. Standard deviation is coming up in the very next lecture. So that's another one of our very common things. So it's important to have a good handle on the central tendency and the variation of your data set. Everything builds on those two. And it can get pretty complicated, or it doesn't have to, but it definitely involves the central tendency and the variation. Okay, I'll see you in the next slideshow about, again, variation.